Picture this. You are making chili or a burger or a bowl of something that already smells good. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you remember that bottle in the cupboard, the one with the label nobody can pronounce. You splash in a small amount, maybe a teaspoon, maybe less. You stir, you taste, and somehow, everything just got better. Most people do that without having any idea what they actually just added. They know it is dark, they know it is sharp, they know it works. But if someone asked them what Worcestershire sauce actually is, most would pause, laugh, and admit they have no idea. The real reason it works the way it does is one of the more quietly fascinating stories in food history, and it starts not in a kitchen but in a pharmacy with a batch of something that tasted absolutely terrible. Let's get into it right here on Secrets of Simple Things. Just a bottle of funk. At its most basic, Worcestershire sauce is a fermented condiment built on a foundation of anchovies, tamarind, vinegar, and molasses. Dark and thin in texture, sharp and funky on the nose, salty and tangy on the tongue with a faint sweetness underneath. It is not a sauce you pour, it is a sauce you splash. A few drops, a careful teaspoon. Because a little of it does what a lot of other things cannot. The bottle looks ordinary, the ingredient list looks strange, and the name, famously, is almost impossible to say correctly on the first try. But underneath all of that is something genuinely old and genuinely clever. An idea about flavor that humans have been returning to in different forms for over 2,000 years. Two pharmacists, one accident. The story begins in 1835 in the English city of Worcester, where two pharmacists named John Wheely Leah and William Henry Perrins were running a chemist shop on Broad Street. Pharmacists in the 1800s were not just dispensing medicine, they were part scientist, part shopkeeper, and part experimenter, selling perfumes, household goods, and food products alongside their remedies. So when someone brought them a recipe and asked them to recreate a sauce, it was not an unusual request. The recipe, according to company legend, came from a nobleman who had tasted something similar in India. The nobleman's story later turned out to be largely invented, a piece of marketing fiction confirmed by the company's own archivist. But the recipe itself was real, and Leah and Perrins mixed up their first batch. It was, by all accounts, dreadful. Sharp and harsh and deeply unpleasant. Not an acquired taste, just genuinely bad. So they did what seemed reasonable at the time. They sealed the barrels, moved them to the basement, and forgot about them. 18 months later, someone opened one. What was inside had transformed entirely. The harshness had mellowed, the individual ingredients had knitted together into something complex and layered. Time and fermentation had done what no recipe could. The accident had become something worth bottling. But as remarkable as that accident was, Leah and Perrins had not invented something new. They had stumbled into something ancient. Fermented fish sauces have appeared independently across nearly every major civilization. In ancient Rome and Greece, a condiment called garum was made by packing fish in salt and leaving it to ferment in the sun. It was sharp, intensely savory, and wildly popular. Roman soldiers carried it in small flasks. Wealthy households used it to season almost everything. It was, in a very real sense, the Worcestershire sauce of the ancient world. Across Southeast Asia, fermented fish sauces evolved along the same lines. In Vietnam, Thailand, and China, small fish packed in salt and left to age produced that same deep, savory intensity. Different cultures, different fish, different climates, the same instinct. Let time do the work that cooking cannot. When Leah and Perrins cracked open those barrels in the cellar of a Victorian pharmacy, they were unknowingly rejoining a conversation that humanity had been having for 2,000 years. Why a few drops work? So why does a small amount of Worcestershire sauce make food taste noticeably better? The answer comes down to something called umami. Umami is the fifth taste alongside sweet, salty, sour, and bitter, and it is best described as a deep, savory richness that makes food feel more satisfying and complete. It is not a flavor you can easily point to. It is more of a quality, a sense that something is rounder, fuller, more real. Worcestershire sauce is extraordinarily high in umami, and the reason is in its ingredients. Anchovies are one of the most glutamate-rich foods in existence. Glutamates are the compounds that trigger the umami sensation on the tongue. When anchovies are fermented over time, those glutamates concentrate and intensify. What was once a small fish becomes essentially a delivery system for pure, savory depth. But anchovies alone would be one-dimensional. That is where the other ingredients complete the picture. Tamarind brings a tangy, fruity sourness that lifts the whole flavor upward, stopping it from feeling heavy or flat. Vinegar adds sharpness and acid, which makes other flavors around it seem brighter and more defined. Molasses contributes a low, dark sweetness that rounds out the edges. Spices add warmth and complexity in the background. Together, these ingredients hit almost every point on the flavor map at once. Salty, sour, sweet, bitter, savory. That is why a single teaspoon can shift the entire character of a dish. It is not adding one flavor. It is adding several in careful proportion all at the same time. And because the amounts used are so small, none of those flavors announce themselves individually. The vinegar does not make the chili taste sour. The molasses does not make the burger taste sweet. Instead, everything simply lifts. The existing flavors in the dish become more defined, more layered, more satisfying. It disappears into the food and makes the food taste more like itself. That is not a simple trick. That is the result of fermentation, time, and a very particular combination of ingredients that humans took 2,000 years to arrive at. It isn't just salty. Most people who use Worcestershire sauce regularly would describe it as salty. A few might say tangy. Almost none would say it is one of the most complete flavor tools in their kitchen. That gap between what people think it is and what it actually does is where the real story lives. The common assumption is that Worcestershire sauce is a seasoning, something in the same category as soy sauce or salt. You add it when you want things to taste a bit more savory, and that is roughly where the thinking stops. But what it is actually doing is far more precise than seasoning. It is balancing. When a dish feels flat or one-dimensional, what it usually lacks is not more salt but more depth, more layers, something to make the existing flavors feel fuller. That is exactly what Worcestershire sauce provides, and it does it across almost every flavor dimension simultaneously. The other common misunderstanding is that it is a distinctly British thing, a curiosity from the Victorian era with a difficult name and a niche appeal. In reality, the same fermented fish logic that produced Worcestershire sauce is the same logic behind some of the most universally loved flavors in the world: Caesar dressing, chili, barbecue, Bloody Mary, the backbone of a good gravy. People use it constantly. They just rarely stop to ask what it is or why it works. And that quiet invisibility is, in its own way, the point. It goes in everything. Today you will find Worcestershire sauce quietly at work in more places than most people realize. In a Bloody Mary, it provides the savory base that stops the drink from tasting like cold tomato juice. In a Caesar dressing, it is one of the ingredients responsible for that unmistakable depth that no amount of lemon juice alone could produce. In chili, it rounds out the harshness of raw spice. In a burger, a small amount worked into the meat before cooking makes the whole thing taste more intensely of itself. Chefs use it in gravies, marinades, and glazes. Home cooks reach for it instinctively when something is missing, even if they cannot name what that something is. And in that role it is performing almost exactly the same function that garum performed in ancient Rome, added in small amounts to dishes that were already good, not to change their flavor but to intensify it, to make the food taste more complete. There is something worth noticing in that continuity. A Roman soldier's flask of garum, a Southeast Asian kitchen jar of fish sauce, a Victorian pharmacy barrel left forgotten in a cellar, and the bottle in your cupboard with the impossible name are all part of the same idea, that when you take fish, add salt, and let time do its work, you end up with something that makes almost everything else taste better. The details changed across 2,000 years. The instinct did not. The flavor you never see. So what exactly is Worcestershire sauce? It is fermented anchovies and tamarind. It is salt and molasses and vinegar and thyme. It is an 1835 pharmacy accident that turned out to be an ancient idea rediscovered. But more than any of those things, it is a reminder of how the most powerful flavors in cooking are rarely the ones you notice most. Nobody finishes a bowl of chili and says the Worcestershire was incredible. They just say it was a really good bowl of chili. The sauce did its work in the background, lifted everything around it, and disappeared. Some of the most powerful flavors are not the ones that stand out. They are the ones you only notice when they are missing. If this changed the way you see that bottle in the back of your cupboard, let us know in the comments what everyday ingredient you want us to look at next. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.